Let us talk about the concept of fractions and percentages, especially as it concerns count versus non-count nouns. This class is specifically for writers, editors, teachers of the English language, and students alike. If you belong to this pack of people, kindly get your seat and get ready to learn. You cannot afford to miss this class, so let's get to it. The topic again is conquer the fractions and percentages with count nouns and non-count nouns. The versus here means and, the conjunction and. The count here stands for the full form of this count is countable nouns, count nouns, and here you have non-count nouns. So simply conquer the fractions and percentages with count versus non-count nouns. Firstly, we need to understand the meaning of the major terms in this topic, starting with fractions. We're going to understand the meaning of fractions, just definition, not the mathematical expression of fractions, just the meaning of fractions, the meaning of percentages. We're going to understand the meaning of count and non-count nouns. Then after that, we'll talk about the structure, the real life of the fractions and percentages. And finally, we'll talk about the rule guiding the concept of fractions and percentages, especially while dealing with these two concepts. Then we'll look at examples. And then we call the class a wrap. So, what are fractions? Fractions are parts of whole numbers. Parts of whole numbers. In singularity, a fraction is just one part, is a part of a bigger number, of a bigger item, is a part of a whole number. An example is that 3 is a whole number. 3 is a whole number. 10 is a whole number, is a big number. Now, if you have 1 over 3, this is a fraction because this one is just a part of 3, is a part of this whole number. 2 over 10 is a fraction because 2 is a part of 10. So this simply gives us the definition of fractions, or what a fraction is. A fraction is simply a part, a micro part of a macro thing. So is a part, is a minute form, is a minute part of something, or maybe a big part of something, of a bigger thing. So for example, look at this marker. This cover is a part of this whole marker. So this is just a fraction of the entire marker. So this is the mathematical expression of what a fraction is. A fraction is just a part of a whole number, just as the roof is a fraction of the entire house. It's just a part of the house. The fraction is a part of a whole number. Percentages are forms of fractions. But simply or basically, a percentage is a fraction over 100. Percentage is a fraction over 100. For example, you know that percentage simply stands for 100. When you say percentage or percent, you're talking about 100. And then when you have 1%, you're saying 1 over 100. 2% is 2 over 100. 3% is 3 over 100. So the major difference between fractions and percentage or percentages is that while fractions can deal with any form of number, in thousands, in millions, in billions, or zillions, a percentage is always over 100. So that is just what these two concepts are about. Fraction is a part of a whole number. A fraction is a part of a whole number. Percentage is a part of 100. Is a part of 100. Count noun or countable noun. A countable noun is a noun that can be numbered. It's a noun that you can number. You can always quantify countable nouns with numbers. For example, you can have 1 before. When you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4, you have a before a noun. That noun has to be a countable noun or a count noun. So when you can number anything, that thing is a count noun. For example, person, persons, boy, boys, chairs, chairs. Chair, chairs, window, windows, roof, roofs. So all of these are just some examples of count nouns. So let us go to non-count nouns. Non-count nouns are the direct opposite of countable nouns of count nouns. So if you can count nouns, then it means that you cannot count non-count nouns. Examples will be water, sand, air, wind, let's say cake, building, flower. Okay, sorry, let's use this flower. So you can count these words, these items. These are just some examples of non-count nouns. So that said, let's go to the structure that realizes the concordative fractions and percentages. And in the English language, you have just two structures that realize the concordative fractions and percentages, both having to do with the fraction and the percentage. So let's get to it. The first structure is you have the percentage. Let's say you have something like 1%, 1/3, or 2/3, 1/3, plus of. You have the fraction plus of plus a noun plus the verb. That's the first structure. Whether you're speaking or you're writing, this structure has to suffice before you have the concordative fraction. So the second structure is you have the percentage, let's say 10%, followed by of, followed by the noun, then followed by the verb. When you have these structures, then you have the concordative fractions and percentages. These are the two structures that realize this type of concord. So what does the rule state about these structures? What does the rule state? The rule is pretty simple. Firstly, when you have a percentage, when you have a fraction, let's start with the fraction. When you have a fraction this way that follows all of this structure, that follows this pattern, the rule states that the noun in this place, the type of noun here, is what will determine your verb here. Let's say, for example, 1/3 of his promise, dash kept. Okay. Number 2, 1/3 of his promises, dash kept. Let's say kept. It's okay. Option A, let's say we have this option, these options, has been. Option B, we have been. Option C, for just one alone, for question one alone, word, okay, it's okay. D, okay, but that makes sense. But this makes sense. I don't want to give very confusing. I don't want to give confusing options for option one. For question one, where, okay, okay. Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way, just to nullify one of the options automatically. I know what I'm doing. Sorry. So for the first example, 1/3 of this promise dash kept, and you have these options: have been, were, was, been, So the rule states that when you have this structure, this pattern of 1/3, the fraction, followed by of, followed by a noun, and then you have the verb. The rule states that the verb here will be determined, will be controlled by the nature of the noun in this place. If the noun is countable, then if that noun is in the singular form, then your verb will be singular. If the noun is plural, then your verb will be plural. I take that again. When you have a concordative fraction that follows this structure, this pattern, you have this, the fraction, you have of, you have the noun being talked about, and then you have your verb. The verb here will be determined by the singularity or the plurality of the noun being talked about. That is, if the noun is a countable noun. If it's a count noun, then the singular noun will take a singular verb, plural noun will take a plural verb. So let's come to the first one. 1/3 of his promise dash kept. This here is a singular count noun. His promise is promise. Not his promises, just one promise. 1/3 of his promise dash kept. So this has to be a singular verb, okay? So let's go to the option, has been kept. Of course, that's the answer, has been kept. That's the answer. Let's check, have been kept is wrong. This is wrong. Why? That's because of the presence of this lexical have. This is a plural verb. Have is a plural verb. So have been kept is wrong. 1/3 of his promise were kept is wrong. Why? That's because of the nature of this count noun. This is a singular count noun, so you have a singular verb. So this is wrong. Was is correct, but this is wrong. Every time you have was, the verb here cannot be been, it has to be been. So this would have been another correct option if what we have here was been. So this isn't the case, so that makes this here, the presence of this makes this option wrong. So the right answer is has been kept. 1/3 of his promise has been kept. So let's go to example number 2. Example number 2. The second example is promises. Promises. You can see here we have promise, here we have promises. This is a count noun. It's a count noun, okay? And this is plural because of the presence of this s. Promises. 1 to 30 promises. The promise is going to build me a house. The promise is going to build me this and that. So promises. 1/3 of his promises dash kept. And then you have these options. Where is, C, was, D, has been. It's okay. So 1/3 of his promises dash kept. Remember that the verb here will be controlled by the nature of this count noun. Is this plural? Yes. Is this singular? No. So because this is plural, your verb has to be a plural verb. So let's come to the options. 1/3. 1/3 of his promises were kept. That's the right answer. Why? Were is the plural form of are in the past. So were is a plural verb. So were is the right answer. So were kept. Let's go to option B. Option B. 1/3. 1. Don't be confused by the fraction here. The rule cancels this out. Remember, what we deal with is the nature of the noun being talked about. So 1/3 of his promises is kept is wrong. Why? Because here we have a plural noun. So let's go to option C. 1/3 of his promises was kept is also wrong. Why? Was is a singular verb, is the past tense of is. So let's come to option D. 1/3 of his promises has been kept. This is also wrong because of the presence of this verb has. If this have been kept, then this and this would have been right. Okay, so that is that about that example. Let's look at another example, still on the first structure. Another example of the building, half of the building dash mine. A is, B are. Let's just stop there. Another example of the houses dash mine. So let's have the same options. Is, are. Now of the building, this is a fraction. Half of this. We don't know the number. Half of this, but this is what we're focusing on. Remember, the attention is not on the fraction. The attention is on the noun that comes after the of. So we're talking about the building. Building is a non-count noun. Building is a non-count noun. And the rule simply says that when you have a non-count noun, the verb is usually a singular verb. It's as simple as that. When you have a count noun, the verb can be plural, it can be singular, depending on the nature of the noun being talked about. But when you have a non-count noun, such as water, if you have water here, water, you have oxygen, you have cake, right? So half of the cake dash mine, half of the cake dash mine. So when you have a non-count noun in the structure of Concord of fractions and percentages, if you have a non-count noun, the verb here must always be a singular verb. So that's why the right option here is. Half of the cake is mine. So, second example, half of the houses. Houses. The emphasis is on houses. The focus should be on houses here. The noun. The noun here has s, a plural marker, that makes this noun a count noun. Are we clear? The presence of this makes this noun a count noun, and therefore you know that when you have a count noun, the verb can either be plural, can either be a plural verb or a singular verb, or depending on the nature of the count noun. If it's singular, then your verb becomes singular. If it's plural, your verb becomes plural. So half of the houses, oh my goodness, are, that's the answer, are mine. So that is done about the first structure, which is the one that has to do with the concord of fractions. So let's go to second structure, the one talking about percentages. So let's say examples. 50% of the house dash been built. Option A, you have has, you have. Let's look at this. 50% of the house dash been built. This is the percentage, that's the first structure, followed by the house, which is the noun, and then you have the verb. Remember, you come back to have the verb here, you come back to what we have here. Is this noun a count noun or a non-count noun? A count noun is a noun that can be counted, or a non-count is a noun that cannot be counted. So can you count a house? Can you count houses? Yes. So the house here is a countable noun, is a count noun. Is it plural? No. It's a singular count noun. And because it's a singular count noun, the verb here has to be a singular verb. So that's why the answer is what? Have? No. Has. 50% of the house has been built. 50% of the house has been built. Another example, let's say 1%, just 1% of the houses, 1% of the houses in my estate dash to me. Option A, we have belong. Option B, we have belongs. 1%, remember, just 1%. 1% of the houses in my estate dash to me. Remember, we don't care about the fraction. We don't care about the percentage. The focus is on the noun. The noun after this of. What matters in this expression, what determines the verb here, is this and not the percentage or the fraction. So 1% of the houses in my estate dash to me. We're talking about houses. Houses are countable nouns. And this is plural. Houses, not building, houses. So because this is plural, your verb has to be a plural verb. So 1% of the houses in my estate. So between belong and belongs, which one is plural? Definitely, you know that belong is plural and belongs is singular. So the right answer here is A, belong. 1% of the many houses in my area belong to me. Of course, you should always remember that a singular verb is a verb that contains s. Of course, in this context, a plural verb usually does not contain an s as a marker. So that is that about the concord of fractions and percentages. So whether you speak or whether you write, remember what the structure states, what the rule states about the structure. When you have the concord of fractions, we don't care about the fraction. All that we care about is the noun being talked about, the noun before the verb. If the noun is a count noun, if the count noun is plural, then your verb will be plural. If the count noun is singular, then your verb will be singular. So if the noun is a non-count noun, your verb will always be a singular verb, regardless of what the percentage is talking about. Maybe it's 99%. Okay, let's have this example. 99% of the water dash being drunk. Okay, you have option A, has. Option B, you have. Okay, all right, you have. Now, 99% of the water that's been drawn. 99% seems like a lot, right? Good. And because it looks like a lot or it sounds like a lot, does not mean that your verb will be plural. You should understand that the focus is not on the percentage. The focus is not on the fraction. We are not dealing with a fraction here. We're dealing with what comes after the fraction. The noun that comes after the fraction, if the noun is a countable noun, and the countable noun is plural, your verb will be plural. If the countable noun is singular, then your verb will be plural. If the noun is a non-count noun, such as we have in this play, just like we have here, 99% of the water. Every time you have a non-count noun, then your verb will always be a singular verb. So 99% of the water is not countable. It's a non-count noun. So 99% of the water has been drunk. That's why this is the answer and this is wrong. And I'm sure that now you know how to apply the concord of fractions and percentages working with count versus uncount now. Before we go, here is the task for you to do. Do what to leave your answer in the comment. Question 1. 50% of is statements of a statement dash false. Okay. Now 50% of everything is said dash false. For the first question. Okay, question 1. For question 1, the options are, was, C, is. Let's just eliminate one of the options, will. Okay. Question 2, for this, question 2, 50% of everything is said dash false. B, are, was, were, and then finally we have D, would. So do what to attempt these questions and leave your answers in the comment. I'll be delighted if I find out the majority of you get their answers correctly, because of course that will convince me that learning truly took place today. However, if you still have a question regarding this concept of concord of fractions and percentages, especially as it concerns count versus uncount nouns, do what to drop your queries in the comment. I'll be delighted to attend to them. Also, I should mention that the next class after this, will be about us taking more exercises on this concept of concord of fractions and percentages. Thanks a lot for watching to this very end. I'll see you next time, but make sure to subscribe to this channel.